Hello everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Voodoo's Verdict. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at a game that is from an independent game development studio called Alien Trap Games. And that's one sort of goal I have in 2015 now that I'm no longer doing full playthroughs on YouTube anymore. I have the opportunity to play a lot more games. And I'd like to get more involved in playing the indie game scene because I really enjoyed two games I played last year that were sort of indie-style games in Child of Light and Valiant Hearts: The Great War. And this year I'd like to play more of them and see what fun we can have. So this game is the first indie game I've played of 2015. It's called Apotheon, and it is actually free in the month of February 2015 for PlayStation Plus users. If you are not, it is $14.99, and I assume it will be once the month is over. So if you are a PS4 user with PS Plus and you're watching this in February, if the game interests you, you can hop on PS Plus right now and get the game for free. So the game is called Apotheon. Now, the first thing that strikes you about Apotheon, if you see any artwork for the game or any trailers for the game, is the art style. And this is one thing I love about indie games, is most of the time indie games try to make themselves stand out by having a unique, interesting art style. And this game is no exception. This game is set in the ancient Greek period, has a lot to do with Greek mythology, well, has everything to do with Greek mythology. And the art style of the game is actually the art style of what you would see on an ancient Grecian urn. And it's very similar, if you've seen the movie Hercules, the Disney movie Hercules, when the muses are having their little song about, they're singing about Meg being in love or whatever, they have a part of that song where they go on like a Grecian urn and are singing the song. So it's that art style, and it's, first of all, it's striking, it's stunning, and it's beautiful. I love the art style of Apotheon, and I love games that are unique and interesting and do cool things with their art style, and Apotheon definitely does that. It does it really well. So what is Apotheon? Apotheon is a 2D action platforming game that is based around a mortal named, his name's kind of, I believe his name is Nicandrios, if I'm remembering correctly. And what's happened is that the gods have forsaken, Zeus has decreed that the bond between the gods and the mortals is broken. So of course this throws the earth into chaos because their fields are going fallow, the waters are rising, all these types of things, because the gods have abandoned them. They're no longer taking care of their section or their domain on earth, and so everything is going to hell. And this is also allowing them to be invaded, and their empire is crumbling, and the gods are not helping them at all. So fortunately for Nicandrios, not all the gods agree with what Zeus has decreed, and some of the gods want to rebel, and so they help Nicandrios to basically get to Mount Olympus and to start killing off the gods that are siding with Zeus. Ultimately, the goal is to get to Zeus and defeat him. So if this plot sounds familiar to you, it should, because it's basically completely ripped from God of War. It is literally the God of War plot. It's not as complex or anything like that. Your main character doesn't have this huge, complex backstory like Kratos. It's nothing like that, but it's basically God of War. You know, the story of God of War transposed into this indie game. So the story is not anything that is unique. It's not anything that is anything that's really going to grip you unless you have not played God of War. If you've never played God of War, then this will be sort of new to you, but for people who have played God of War, I played the whole trilogy and loved them, this story is literally ripped right from it, alright? But the gameplay of Apotheon, it's not anything too complex. Like I said, it's a 2D action game, so you will, the main point of the game is to get through the levels, sometimes solving puzzles or acquiring different items of the different gods and their domains in order to be able to fight them. And the 2D world is, each area is sort of big, and so you're able to explore and get loot, different weapons, things like that. And there's not a whole tons of weapon types in the game. There's maybe a few different weapon types, like a spear, a sword, an axe, those types of things. And you can pick them up along the way, and sometimes you'll find a unique version of these weapons, and you can pick those up, and they'll do increased damage. And it's you know, the gameplay when you find them is just 2D action. You know, so you swing your weapon at them, they swing their weapon at you. You have a shield that you can put up to block, and then continue to try to kill the enemy. You can craft different items. You can craft health vials. You can craft throwable weapons, things like that. And like I said, it's not anything that's too complex, but you can go around the world and look for different loot and things like that. You can look for money because you can buy weapons and things from vendors that you find. And you know, overall, that's pretty much what there is to Apotheon. There's not a lot for me to go in depth and talk to you about, because there's really not too much in depth of a game. But that doesn't mean it's good. It's actually, I found the game really enjoyable to be able to go around the world and explore. First of all, just because of the art style, to be able to go around and explore these different areas, and to go through these stages, which are all pretty unique and different, and actually fight and have boss fights against these gods. Because as you're going through the game and completing these levels, you fight a bunch of the gods that are, you know, oppressing you in boss fights. And you can get special things from them, like special weapons and all, when you beat them, and that's pretty fun. Now, there's some complaints I have about the game. First of all, the combat is a little wonky. And when I say that, I mean, because it's 2D, you have no three-dimensional aspect of distance or spatial. You know what I mean? There's no 3D world for you to do combat in, so you're limited to a planar surface. And so when an enemy gets maybe too close to you on the screen or something like that, when you're trying to fight him, your weapon won't hurt him. It'll just basically swing right through him, because he needs to be the enemy needs to be on the screen in the hitbox where the weapon is. So if he's close enough to you and you have like an axe and you swing and the blade of the axe comes down past where his character is, it won't hurt him. So if there's somebody right in your face, you can't hurt him. There's no way to hurt him. You have to back up and distance yourself the right amount of distance so that when you swing your weapon, the hitbox will register. This is a real problem when you have stuff like the spear, because the spear is a long weapon, and you have to be a considerable distance away for you to actually hurt the enemy when you stab. If he's anywhere, you know, on the screen that's closer to you than the blade of the spear, you're not going to hurt him. So you're just going to stab, you know, endlessly. And this is a real problem, because if you're back up against a wall, and he, you know, the edge of the level, and the enemy is coming at you and he's in your face, there's no way to hit him. Now, luckily, there is a roll in the game, a dodge roll, that you can roll through things. So if that happens, you can always roll through the enemy and get on the other side of them, so you can attack them from there. But it's kind of wonky, and a lot of times, especially when you're fighting big groups, it can be very difficult to try and eliminate them all or pick who you want to hit, because it depends on how far they are on the screen from you, and when there's a bunch of them on the screen, it's kind of hard to determine that. So it can be a little frustrating, and then when you actually hit things, it is, if you watch my Dying Light review, I said that the combat is really visceral and rewarding, because when you hit something in Dying Light, it feels like you hit something. In this game, it's not that way. You have really no sense of anything. You just sort of stab on the screen and the guy dies. It's not really this sense of actually hitting something. It can be. It depends. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. For instance, if you do it like a flying jump and you come down and hit an enemy, sometimes that feels pretty freaking awesome, because you'll hit them and you'll freaking cut their head off or something. But a lot of times, just in the regular 2D combat, with certain weapons like a spear or a sword, it doesn't feel that great. Sometimes the axe can give you some satisfaction, but other than that, it's kind of poofy combat, if I can use that word. It's not really too visceral. The biggest issue I had with the game, bar none, is the fact that the last couple of stages of the game, I felt were really poorly designed. And the reason is, for a good chunk of the last part of this game, you are running around trying to collect, and I even forgot what they are now, but you're trying to collect these... actually, you're not trying to collect, I think you're trying to push buttons. You're trying to push buttons to open doors when you're making your final run at Zeus and you're sort of climbing his tower. And the problem is you don't know where these things are. You have to sort of run around on the map looking for these buttons to hit in order to open doors so that you can continue your way up the tower. And you are being attacked by tons and tons and tons of enemies at once. And there's basically no way you can fight them all. If you try to fight them all, they're going to kill you pretty damn fast. There's just too many on the screen. So basically the idea is you just have to run. You have to run around the map looking for these buttons to hit. Now one, that's really annoying. Alright, because again, it is 2D. So you might run over here, oh, there's a wall. That's not the button, you got to turn around and go back. But when you turn around, there's a group of 10 dudes right here, and sure, you can roll, but as you're rolling, you're getting hit and effed up, and by the time you roll through the group to the side to run the other way, you've lost half your life. It's really freaking annoying. But the biggest problem, bar none, at this part of the game, and it's really not a problem until you get here, the frame rates go in the freaking toilet. Alright? Now, I make jokes a lot of times and say, oh my god, the frame rate's like a PowerPoint. Now, most of the time, it's not really a PowerPoint, alright? It's like 15 frames a second or whatever. When I say this game runs like a PowerPoint, I'm not kidding. It literally is frames of animation like a picture book. I'm not kidding. That's how bad the frame rate crashes. Now, I'm sure it has everything to do with how many enemies that they spawned on the screen at one time, alright? So, the entire sort of last part of this game is you running around the map endlessly looking for these buttons to press while you're being chased by a huge group of enemies that are doing massive damage to you, all while you are playing a PowerPoint. So it is probably one of the most frustrating things I've done in a game, and it really sucks because the whole game is really enjoyable, and then you get to this end part and you're like, what the fuck is this? And why am I playing it, and why is this so shitty? And obviously nobody at Turtle Rock Studios, not Turtle Rock, sorry, that's who made Evolve, the game I'm playing right now, Alien Trap, play tested the end of the game, because it doesn't function, alright? It goes in the fucking toilet, the frame rate. And add to that the frustration of being attacked, and it just sucks. So that's really aggravating. Now, the final boss fight I thought was really fun and unique and interesting. But leading up to it is just hell, alright? So, overall, Apotheon, it's not a very long game. I'd say I played the campaign and beat it maybe 5 to 6 hours. So it's a decent length, for a digital game. But it's not anything long. You could probably add a couple more hours to it because I found out that there were actually a few optional areas that I didn't go to in the game. I guess I just didn't run across them in my exploration. So you could probably add a couple, maybe 1 or 2 hours onto the game if you do all the side content. And then you're starting to talk about a pretty good length game, maybe, 7, 8 hours. But I enjoyed Apotheon. It's certainly not perfect. The plot, like I said, is stolen from God of War. They didn't really do anything unique with the plot. The combat is sort of wonky because of the 2D limitations of the game. And the lead up to the final boss is really crappy and annoying and poorly programmed and not tested, alright, and it will piss you off. But the cool things about the game, really unique, interesting art style that keeps you entertained the whole time you're playing the game. Cool boss fights against famous Greek gods is always cool. Open world sort of aspect where you can go around and find different loot and explore optional areas. And the soundtrack is really good, alright? There's one thing I forgot to mention. The soundtrack to the game is awesome. It's really cool. So I think it's sort of a mixed bag. I think overall the game is good. The game is enjoyable. Definitely check it out if you have PS Plus. It's free. Absolutely check it out if it's free. Whether or not it's worth $15 is going to be up to you. If you enjoy these sort of 2D indie style games with unique unique art style and interesting gameplay, then this is probably up your alley. If you're looking for something that has a really cool, unique story, or if you are, I don't know, if you just don't enjoy these style of games, then obviously it probably won't be worth the $15 to you. So you're going to have to make that determination. So Apotheon, there's a whole lot of good, a decent amount of bad. So when I add these things in my head together, I give Apotheon a 7.5 out of 10 for what it is. Now, obviously, I'm not rating it like a major retail release. I'm rating it for what it is, for an independent $15 digital release out of a scale of 10. 10 being the best digital indie release that there could be. I'm going to rate it a 7.5. All right. I think it's a pretty good game overall. Enjoyable, interesting art style, easy on the eyes, except for the fact that the frame rate goes to shit in the last part of the game. You know, generally a unique and enjoyable game with some frustrations and some things that should have been cleaned up and maybe a more original plot. All right. So that is my Voodoo's verdict of the indie game Apotheon. Definitely check it out if you have PS Plus, since it's free, and you're just going to have to sort of see for yourself by watching trailers or some gameplay whether or not you think it's worth $15 if you don't have PS Plus, or you're watching this after February, where I assume it will no longer be free, and even if you have PS Plus, you'll have to pay for it. All right? So that is my review of Apotheon. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all throughout 2015 with more Voodoo's Verdict game reviews. Thanks, and see you next time.